This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to the Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relation podcast. Since 2015, I am back here in the very fine studios of Pod Populi, podcast for the people. This time I'm at the one in Boca Raton, Florida. Boca Raton means rat mouth, which is not good. I don't think you can change it after all this time, but if you only speak Spanish, you're like, why would I go there? You should go to Boca Raton. It's very nice. Anyway, I recently did a show in Boston, Massachusetts. It was wicked awesome. It was, as they say, a real pissa. And I went to college back in the day in Massachusetts. So I had a handful of people that I know, or I used to know, probably should still know, who made the trip into the very, very expensive city of Boston. And they probably not just bought tickets, but they probably paid $75 for 3 hours of parking to see my show. Boston is insanely expensive. So I appreciate it. Anybody who came to see me. And somebody came from D.C., a lovely, lovely young woman came all the way from D.C. to see the show, and I appreciate her and everybody who came. But one of the guys I knew, Greg, from college, and I had not seen or talked to him in quite a while. He's married, he's got 3 kids, and he thought it'd be amusing. I'm going to go to the Great Love Debate. I'm going to see what Howie's up to. And he came up to me and he asked me, he goes, "You've never been married. Why do you care so much about this stuff?" And my initial reaction was to ask, this stuff? What do you mean by this stuff? But I knew what he meant. It would have been disingenuous for me to go like, wait, what are you talking about? I don't know. I knew exactly what he meant. So rather than play dumb, I thought about the answer. But rather than give him the answer and then repeat that answer that I gave him for you, I made him do the work. I said, I'm going to answer that question in a fair amount of detail on the next podcast. So this is the next podcast. So you get it hot and fresh out of the oven here. And you, Greg, I hope you're listening. You asked the question, and I hope this answer suffices. I hope it answers it, because I like being asked the question because it makes me think. And that means it's a good question, because if I think and I've sort of elaborated on an answer, it's not a simple question. So it was a good question. So first of all, the "we've never been married" qualifier in his question, if anything, that makes me care more about this stuff. It's not just because I'm trying to get married. I actually am and will sooner than later. Breaking news in the near future, I hope. But I care more about this stuff, I think, because I have not been married. And most likely, if I'd been married, I would have been subsequently divorced, which means because I have not experienced those things, I am not jaded. I am not bitter. I'm a little cockeyed optimist. I'm not disinterested in it because it's like, yeah, you know what? It's not really like that. So the fairy tale has not been bursted for me. I believe in all the stuff. I believe in the 50 years and the death to us part and the happily ever after and the you and the me and let's do this and all the stuff. I absolutely believe in it, and I absolutely believe that is ahead for me, for you, for all of us. I do. Is that naive? Perhaps. Doesn't mean I don't believe it. And if you believe it, you care about it. You have to care about it to believe in it. Those two things are inextricably linked. This stuff. Care so much about this stuff. But this caring about this stuff, it preceded my metamorphosis into such a romantic fella that I wanted to get married for 50 years and all that. It goes before that. It goes back to probably the height of my jackassery, so to speak. It goes back to the aforementioned college days, and it certainly goes into my early 20s and probably even in my 30s. So to give you the actual root of when I really, really light bulb went off and I'm like, oh my God, this is the stuff that matters to me. I had this girlfriend when I was about, I don't know, 25, like 25 or 26. And we were living in the city. New York City is still the city. Sorry, San Francisco. I know you've been trying to like hijack that moniker, and the Warriors once in a while wear shirts that say like the city. That's not the city. Anyway, this girlfriend I had, she was certainly really, really attractive at that time. And only at that time. She was the best looking girl I had ever dated and probably ever seen at that time. No offense to anybody since. And she was my girlfriend. I was like, oh my God, good for you, Brian Howie. But she had these, as they tend to do, no offense. She had these wild mood swings and these flashes of insecurity that were always a bit of a roller coaster, but I didn't really care, because she was hot. I thought I could hang on, just enjoy the ride. Who cares, right? So one night we go to this party on the island. Long Island, not Staten Island, Long Island. I suppose we were on an island, Manhattan. We started on an island and we went out to Long Island. That's the island. We go to the party and then we come home and she is taking off her smoky eye makeup and her giant hoop earrings. I like what I like. That's what I like. I like smoky eyes. And she looks at me and she sees me looking at her and she looks at me and she goes, I was the hottest girl at that party tonight, wasn't I? And I, wanting to roll my eyes, but also actually agreeing with her, said, yep, you sure were. She was. Weird that she said it. I know you're rolling your eyes. She said it. I agreed with it. There we go. And I passed out. Too many drinks, passed out, done. 6-7 hours later, I wake up and she's sitting on the couch crying. And I asked what she was crying about, which is always fraught with peril. And I said, what's the matter? And she responded that she was fat and ugly. She was crying because she was fat and ugly. And I'm like, wait, what? How long had I been asleep? What happened to the hottest girl at the party? What happened to that girl? We agreed on it and then I passed out. And I made that mistake. Never do that. I made the mistake of reminding her that she had just declared herself such just like 7 hours prior. And she said, fuck you, I'm fat, fuck off, go get me some breakfast. So we had a situation with which I was A, not entirely familiar, B, definitely not equipped to handle, and C, I had a suddenly feeling fat size 0, size 2 girl crying out for a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. Or a bagel. Or probably both. And it was that minute, that conversation, that feeling of what am I dealing with as I was walking down the street in the cold January New York morning, hungover and fetching food, that I thought, I need to figure this stuff out. I cared about her. I cared about me. I cared about the relationship. I need to figure this stuff out. Her, them, us, it, all of it. And so I began to. And I did a lot of it. More than most. I don't know everything, but I know a lot more than most because I think I care about it a lot. And I've been asking about it since that day, back in my 20s. Why did I figure so much of it out? That's it. That's the reason. Because I care. And I want to dive into those reasons, the why I care. And because you are listening, I think you care and why we should all care. But I have to take a quick break. And because you care, I know you'll come back and we will be back right after this. And we are back and we are talking about caring, about love, sex, dating, relationships, and all of that. And everything I have ever, since that day, professionally, everything I started to write that day. When I got home, I just started to write questions, thoughts, answers, what I was dealing with. I got a old school legal pad after I got the bacon, egg, and cheese, and after I got the bagel. And I started to write. And everything since that day, everything I have ever written about, directed, produced, talked about, shared, earned a living from, almost every bit of it professionally and probably personally is in some way rooted in the dynamic between men and women. For me, Don't give me the, what about guy, guy, girl, girl? What about, a lot of this is indeed applicable to that, but for me, it isn't about that. It isn't about that. I thought, and I still think, that if I can or could solve the mystery of the dynamic between men and women, I will get the keys to the kingdom. And at 25, I thought the kingdom meant maybe not her, but all the girls. That was what I thought me solving this puzzle would get me. Just a bountiful feast. Anybody I wanted. I have this information. It was like in Back to the Future 2. Is it 2 when he has all the sports scores? I have the information. I have the secret codes. That'll what it get me. That is what solving this puzzle would get me. I don't want that now. Now I want the girl. And I've talked to you about who the girl is at prior podcast, what that means. One girl. I would get the keys to her, whatever, everything. Heart, head, soul, mind, etc. Not because I solved her, because I think that's kind of offensive. People are complicated and you're not going to solve them, so to speak. But because I had, to some degree, more than most, solved this. So, yeah, I've always cared to a degree for selfish reasons. And now they're also a bit more societal. People are like, why are you so upset about school closings when you don't even have kids? And I'm like, because it was so insane. I cared about it societally. Cared about the reasons. And I thought if I can solve it and speak to it and learn it and share it, that behooves us all. So this isn't one big, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. The Youngblood song. Is that who sang that? It was the 60s song. Sorry if I'm dating myself. It's an old song. It's an oldie. But I've been working on this a long, long time. And I've come up with all sorts of quippy and hopefully memorable lines about all this that people tend to repeat. And it gets this show, it made the show big because it got a lot of attention. So I would say, you know, the famous women look for red flags and men look for green lights. And the women want the men to try harder and the men want the women to make it easier. Those are some of the Brian Howie-isms, but they are accurate and they're understandable. And people are like, yeah, you're right. I get that. They're meaningful and accurate and have gotten me quite a little bit of notice because summing something up in a way that makes you and what you are saying more memorable is a positive. That's great. Gets you a big audience. Here we are. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. But it's still about the stuff. Me writing that and saying that and repeating that and thinking about that, it's about the stuff. And I think Greg's question wasn't so much about the stuff, which is we were all interested in to some degree. It was more about the caring. Because we recognize this stuff exists and it's complicated and we're all kind of trying to work our way through it. The stuff, some of the muck that's in the stuff, we're all trying to do that. It was about the caring. It was, why do you seemingly care more about this stuff than any other stuff? More than you care about the Mets and bald eagles and Carolina barbecue. Why is it this stuff that drives so much of your thought and time and even your livelihood? And is it bad to care? And is it possible to care too much about caring? Especially about one thing. I don't know. This is called the Great Love Debate, but this really isn't about love. Love is more the romantic manifestation of all of this. Caring, communicating, confidence. All of those things are subsets and ingredients of the greater package of love. But I think love is more like energy. Remember what we learned in whatever grade we learned? I don't even know what grade we learned stuff in because there's like 6 things that I think we learned, and those are the 6 things that matter, but I don't know when we learned them. Anyway, love is more like energy. And we learned in energy back in the day that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be simply transferred and transformed. I think love is probably like that love is energy. It's passed along, and it changes, and it rises, and it falls, and it grows, and it shifts, and it passes from one entity to another. So I don't think we're creating love here. At the end of this show, you're going to hear me say, we never stop making love. It's a little inaccurate, but you get what I'm getting at. I think we are creating caring, which sounds a little more nebulous, but it's actually a little probably easier to understand because it matters. All of it. The guys and the gals, the boys and the girls, the men and the women, all of it. Why did she think that way? Why does he act that way? Why did we get together in the first place? Why aren't we together anymore? Why won't she just fucking call me back? We ask these questions and we want these answers for one reason and one reason only, because we care. That is it. Do I care too much? Do you care too little? I think everything, the outcome, the answers, the possibilities, they all begin and are rooted in caring. It's about the why. It's about the how. It's about the what. It's about the her or him or us. I think that's where the answers lie. To try and solve her or him, to try and solve this. Us, all of it, collectively. The answers can be found by understanding the dynamic. What are the elements? What are the ingredients? Especially, what are the variables? That girlfriend back in the day, a lot of variables. This movement to pretend we're all the same, and I'm not trying to get all political or controversial here, that we are these gender neutral, sexless, opinionless, emotionless, I don't know, beings. That, I think, moves us farther away as people. I think we need labels. Ingredients are fucking found on labels. And then you take those labels, you study them, you examine them, you figure out what makes them them, and you figure out what that can turn into. My girlfriend who felt fat and ugly, well, her label said spicy and hot. And when you open that jar, it led to this. Combined her with me, and we have this. All of this. This conversation and this movement and this podcast and this passion for it, the caring. You had a complicated girl and a curious guy, and you put those together, and great love debate, I guess. But mostly the caring. And that's why I care about this stuff. I don't think this stuff could possibly be less important than all the other stuff that we all worry about. To the point of obsession, for me, for some of us, probably, maybe, possibly, who cares? Do I like football and the NFL and all the sports? Yeah. Is that how I spend my Sunday? Yeah. But I also want to know about their relationships. I don't care about the gossip side of it. I don't care about who's dating who. I care about what is making what work or not work. I want to know what Tom Brady and Giselle talked about on the first 20 dates. I've always wanted to know that. She was Brazilian and had no idea probably who he was, and he was handsome and he had money and some degree of fame back then, but she had her own money and her own fame. And he was in a situation where his ex, Bridget Moynihan, was pregnant with his kid, which is a weird situation. They found out she was pregnant after they broke up. It was an unusual dynamic, different cultures. So I was always like, what do they talk about? What did they laugh about? How are they still together? I care about all of that. I don't care about who someone's dating. I care about why they're dating. Kobe Bryant and Vanessa, rest in peace. But he famously, at best, we could call it cheated on her. At best. He bought her $1 million forgive me ring. Was that it? Is that what they call it? Was it? And so I was always like, what is it, the jewelry? Was it the counseling? Was it sincere remorse? Was it, I don't know, you're Mrs. Kobe Bryant. You want the perks, you got to deal with the problems. I care about the why and the how, not the who. So I'm constantly wondering and asking and learning and, sharing this stuff, hence this podcast. Caring about it. And I think the more questions that you ask, I think the more you care. And we should always care, and we should always ask questions, because you can never run out of questions. And if you ask them of yourself and your partners and strangers and basically any others, you care. Caring is everything. And if you listen this far, and if you listen fairly regularly, I'm pretty sure you care about this stuff so much. Can you care too much? I honestly don't think so. Because one of the roots of caring is always curiosity, and curiosity drives passion, and passion drives outcome. And the outcome should be all of the stuff I mentioned earlier, the me and the you and the us and the happily ever after and the death do us part, the end. But ironically, and I think fortuitously, the end begins with caring. Show you care. Admit you care. Start to care. And most importantly, don't be afraid to tell them that you care about this stuff. I care about it, Greg. Sorry. So much. If you have comments, thoughts, opinions, and I was going to say, if you care, you definitely care if you're going to email me. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com, and give us your thoughts. We have a listener letters coming up again, get you into the last bit of 2022. Go to greatlovedebate.com. There are a couple more shows on tap. I'm working on the Croatia thing. I know a lot of people are like, oh, wow, Croatia, but it's hard to go there for just one show, so I'm sort of coordinating that. And most importantly, as always, like, share, review, and follow this podcast. Your reviews mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem because, as I said earlier, at the Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.